Welcome back. Today we are going to understand the topic of quantification of electromagnetic interference in RF circuits. So to begin with, let me begin with an example. Here you say that you have a motor control circuit, and if you have a motor that is working from the mains as shown in the figure, this is a DC motor or a universal motor with brushes. An AC power cable connected to the junction feeds AC power to the motor as well as some sensitive circuits, which are required for controlling some other circuits of motor control circuit. The motor control circuit involves switching by semiconductor devices with very fast rising pulses. Noise produced in the motor due to the brushes and commutation and the noise produced by the controls would be conducted along the lines, and it can be distributed to the AC power to the sensitive circuits, which is shown in orange here on this slide. This has a potential to cause disturbance in the sensitive circuit, and this is called the conducted interference, the one which is marked in orange. Then some of the noise could be transmitted by the wirings acting like transmitting antennas. It will be radiated into air, and sensitive circuit will pick it up, and this kind of noise is called the radiated interference, which is marked in blue. So this is a typical example of radiated and conducted emission. So for quantification, what we understand by quantification is the EMI measurement. So if we understand EMI measurement, they are broadly classified into two major categories: the emission testing and immunity testing. So conducted emission testing is done to estimate or determine the noise generated due to sudden changes in voltage or current in the circuitry of the equipment being emitted through the power lead into the peripheral loaded devices. The unwanted noise could have a fatal effect on the connected devices and may lead to the malfunction of the equipment. Some popular methods uh, for conducted emission testing are listed here: line impedance stabilization network LISN, 1 ohm method, and the third one is using probes, the current probe and the voltage probe, and the fourth one is the TEM cell. Then in the next lecture we'll be talking about immunity testing, but basically today we'll be talking of quantification of EMI, and we'll be talking of emission testing alone. So in radiated emission testing, as we have seen in the previous slide, the main the main topics to be covered is the open area test site, EMI antenna, EMI receiver, the spectrum analyzer, which is an equipment to pick up the electromagnetic interference, the anechoic chamber, and the reverberation chamber. Nearly every electronic instrument acts as a electromagnetic polluter due to intentional or unintentional conducted or radiated emissions originating from it. These unwanted emissions originating from power cables, wires, resistors, capacitors, op amps, etc., can go up to gigahertz uh, and can be conducted through AC power system. Therefore, every electronic equipment must undergo emission testing in order to keep the electromagnetic environment clean and usable for other licensed applications. The emitter in these types of tests is the equipment under test, which is generally called EUT. As mentioned, emission testing can be done for radiated or conducted emissions. So the following subsections that will be talking of different measurement setups to estimate EMI. So this is a reverberation chamber. A reverberation chamber, sometimes known as a mode tuned or mode stirred chamber, is a shielded enclosure or resonant cavity for RF testing. This chamber is statistically isotropic, random polarity, having RF uniformity within specified limits. So the limits are also about the frequency. Typically, a reverberation chamber has a paddle or tuner which stirs the field, randomizing the boundary conditions. So these plates that you see, they can change the boundary conditions in the chamber. There are two types of reverberation testing methods. Mode tuned refers to when the paddle is stepped to a position and then RF is applied for a dwell time sufficient to exercise the equipment. The tuner can be driven by a computer controlled stepper motor that also drives RF generation and monitoring equipment. The second type is mode stirred. It is when the paddle is continually tuned with RF energy applied for a paddle revolution. Paddle speed is varied to meet the specific requirements of the device under test. In both methods, a single full turn of the paddle applies RF energy to all sides of the device in one pass. This greatly simplifies the process compared to direct illumination testing. So, the equipment under test is kept here. Okay, so the next one in line is the anechoic chamber. Anechoic means without echoes. Simply put, it is a chamber without reflections from the walls, ceiling, or floor. It may be an acoustic anechoic chamber where the walls are treated with fiberglass sound absorbers to suppress echoes. In our RF world, we are talking about a shielded room where the inner surfaces have been treated with radio wave absorbers. Typical absorbers may be foam pyramids loaded with carbon for frequencies about 500 megahertz, or they may be ferrite tiles for frequencies below 500 megahertz. The next is the gigahertz TEM cell. A GTM is an alternative EMC site. So, a semi anechoic chamber, there is a fully anechoic chamber. So, to perform, so the GTM is used to perform emissions and immunity test in the far field conditions according to the requirements of the EMC measurements. A GTM cell enclosure is made of conductive material such as metal in the shape of a long rectangular base pyramid. The pyramid is normally laid flat on the major side, although occasionally it may be stood on its base. The base is typically lined internally with radiation absorbent material such as carbon foamed loaded hybrid absorbers with ferrite tiles, but the side walls are left bare to act as a waveguide. A stripline tapered conductor known as septum connects internally the input output port, apex connector, and a hybrid termination resistive and RAM absorbers are also what we are going to see in the forthcoming slide. So, if you see, there are certain conical structures which are seen inside, which are nothing but the EM absorbers. So let us go ahead with conducted understanding the conducted emission testing, we are looking at those four methods. One is the LISN, then the second one 1 ohm method. So conducted emission testing is done to estimate or determine the noise generated due to sudden changes, and here we have seen four of them listed. You notice that the equipment under test is kept on a ground plane, and the emissions are read on this spectrum analyzer. Uh, the emissions are nothing but the interference signals that need to be measured, but it is not directly connected. There is a LISN in between. So we will understand now what actually happens, what an LISN is. That is a line impedance stabilization network. So there is an equipment here before you. I have taken it from the site of Rohde and Schwarz. The one, uh, the LISN is a HEMEG instrument here. Sorry, it is not Rohde and Schwarz, but this is a HEMEG instrument, but the site, if you notice, is uh, Rohde and Schwarz. So here, if you see, the line stabilization network is to be connected to the spectrum analyzer. So this, it helps in two major things. So LISN provides a defined stable impedance across the measurement frequency range and isolates the EUT and measurement circuit from the power source, thereby minimizing its influence on the measurements, and couples the disturbance voltages to the coaxial measurement port for connection to the measuring instrument. So here we will see uh, an LISN network is explained. It is for the three-phase large loads. Here, if you notice, uh, the purpose of the LISN is twofold. First, to prevent high frequency interference from the main supply, contaminating the measurement of the EM noise emanating from the equipment under test. Second is to present an approximately constant impedance looking towards the mains to noise current emanating from the EUT. So the spectrum analyzer impedance is represented by this Rn here. So this is the looking in impedance of the port of the spectrum analyzer. Both of these networks are typically the same. So you have the line, neutral and ground. So you notice here I've just separated these networks to show that I mean the same thing. So this is the comprehensive one, but if you look into each of this is the line impedance stabilization network. They are basically filters, and this port is nothing but the port of the spectrum analyzer. Okay, so here too this stands for the port of the spectrum analyzer, which is 50 ohm. All right, so moving ahead, this impedance is going to be 50 ohms for a range of frequencies from 150 kilohertz to 30 megahertz. The latter requirements is necessary since the impedance of the supply to high frequency current varies widely depending on the location of the test. So, and if in any situation we were allowed to persist, it would result to poor repeatability of the tests. So, a typical design of a LISN is shown. A typical design here where Rn is the 50 ohm. The isolation of the measurement set up from EMI originating from the power network is accomplished by components C3, which is here, L1 and L2. Here this is L2 and C2. Here C2. So this is C3, this is C2, this is L1, L2, and this is C1. Both of these are C1. So capacitors C1 are a DC block to protect the measuring instrument from overload, and L3, which is here, if you notice, this is L1, L2, this is L4, this is C1. Both of these are DC blocking. Alright, and L3 is here. So the L3 discharges these capacitors, the DC block capacitors. With this arrangement, the conducted emissions originating from the equipment under test are measured across 50 ohm. It is clear that inductors L1 and L2, this is L1 and L2, must be rated to carry full supply load at 50 or 60 Hz. This makes it bulky and expensive. For this reason, techniques were developed to achieve the same objective as the LISN but using a simpler and cheaper probe. Okay, so here you notice that this end would go to the equipment under test and this end to the power supply. Alright, so this is nothing but I've just split the same design and shown to you. They are the same, the values are the same. The next method is the 1 ohm method. This specifies a method to measure the conducted electromagnetic emission of integrated circuits by direct radio frequency current measurement with a 1 ohm resistive probe, and you can also have it with a RF voltage measurement using 150 ohm coupling network. These measurements guarantee a high degree of repeatability and correlation of the EMI measurements. The standard used is IEC 61967-1. It specifies general conditions and definitions of the test methods. With the 1 ohm method, the direct radio frequency current is measured by the use of 1 ohm resistive probe. And with the 150 ohm method, the RF voltage is measured using a 150 ohm impedance matching network. Alright, due to the simple measurement setup, so these are the probes here. This could be 150 ohm or it could be 1 ohm. Due to the simple measurement setup, these two methods guarantee a high degree of repeatability and correlation of EMI measurements. Fast changes of the RF currents inside and outside the IC are considered to be the reason for the high radiated and conducted emissions of the integrated circuit. These changes drive RF currents, which are mainly distributed via the IC pins to the signal traces of the printed circuit board. Often, the layout of the PCB generates loops which are regarded as emitting antennas. In comparison to the dimension of these PCB loops, the loops inside the IC are considered to be small. as most of the RF currents return via the ground or supply pin, as this is the best location to measure the conducted emission. The RF current probe is put into the ground return path, because you will notice that they will want to pass through the towards the ground, and hence the probe is placed close to the ground in the return path. So the 1 ohm method or the 150 ohm method, so this is the same thing. Typically, if it's a 150 ohm method, also it's only that the probe resistance would be 150 ohm. The coupling network would offer 50 or 150 ohm. Alright, now coming to the voltage and current probe, a modified conducted emission test setup that may be utilized at a user's installation using the voltage probe is shown. So to the right is the voltage probe method, and to the left is the current probe. A voltage probe may also be used where the use of LISN is impossible due to high current requirements of the EUT. In the test setup with the voltage probe, both the EUT and the installation environment are tested. The problem with the test method is that AC power line conducted noise from locations outside of the jurisdiction of the user are also measured. The addition of a large ferrite balloon with 2 to 10 turns on all the power conductors, including safety ground, can help reduce the ambient noise. An alternative test method is by using a current probe, which is shown to the left. So the second advantage of the proposed setup is that current probe measurement is isolated from power line generated noise by the series inductor. The test circuit can provide an impedance within the tolerance limit. So this is an alternative to LISN, where LISN sees its limitations. The next is the GTM. So this is what I was talking of, the TEM cell. It becomes clearer here. The transverse electromagnetic cell. It was first developed by Crawford in 1974 and is a major facility that is used for emission testing. It is in fact a version of GTM cell that works on frequencies from anything between 0 Hz to several megahertz. Basically, it is a transmission line which is tapered at both ends for impedance matching. For conducted emission testing, the EUT is placed inside the cell, which is connected to a port of 50 ohm impedance and a spectrum analyzer on the other port. The EUT radiates the noise within the cell, which is propagated to the terminals. The EUT is connected to the LISN, which is connected to the power supply. So the RF port of a LISN is terminated with 50 ohm. Alright, here the LISN is not shown, but it has to be understood. Thank you very much. We have understood today the quantification of EMI, and basically we have only spoken about radiated and conducted emission, but basically Next time, in the next class, we'll be talking of immunity emissions.